Hi, Samima.
Hey, Hora.
Welcome to the 11th actually episode of Philosophers in the Therapy Room. And I guess we, up to now, we have somehow built a principle or a foundation of what exactly are we doing here.
I believe so.
And I'm hoping that our actually the audience had a kind of a sense of what exactly are we doing here and how different such analysis, such philosophical analysis, what are the differences between such analysis and other schools of psychology and psychotherapy, what are the differences there, and how helpful and meaningful such analysis would be for remedy for healing project, and how we can address the symptoms, the bodily sense of our psychological life and events. I guess one of the most important things that as therapists we deal with and we see in our clients is the concept of trauma. This is actually the life of this concept. It's not very old. Age is very
and people young. Have now everyone is talking about it.
Yes.
And like, which is a good thing in a way that people are aware of it. But you're right that if you read literature, you watch movies, there's no mention of it, and there are stories where someone has been into an accident and then they go silent. So that was the only understanding we had of trauma, that this person, and I don't think the word was even used.
No, the word hasn't been used actually.
Like it was blunt force trauma or like trauma to the brain in the sense of actual physical trauma.
So it was a medical term actually. It was very, very medical term.
But not as the way we use it now. And so you're correct that it's a very recent phenomenon.
Yes, it's a recent phenomenon, and as you said, it is there are so many good things about becoming part of the everyday language. It has so good things, positive points to such thing, and there are some negative point to such concepts that become everyday, has its everyday usage. And the reason I think positive things about that, we can just go for it in a moment, but the negative is just it loses its capacity to hold richness and the depth. So it becomes an ordinary, experience. Which trauma, it's not an ordinary experience.
It has been made very light now. I mean, people just say that, oh, you're giving me PTSD by sitting so close to me. So so it has become so mundane. And like everything, and I mean, every bad experience leaves you with an impact, but not a traumatized experience. Trauma is specific to very deep impact, something, and as we will discuss, it is hard to process. So if you are able to process and talk about it,
you such sitting by next to me.
You are talking to me in a sharp voice that is traumatizing. Then it's not. It's painful, it's uncomfortable, without a doubt, but not a traumatizing experience, because trauma is something that goes way, way deeper than just feeling uncomfortable. I agree that it has become, it's kind of starting to lose its value, because it has been used willy-nilly for any kind of experience, and everyone is diagnosing themselves with whatever
trauma and PTSD and complex PTSD.
So it's kind of losing the seriousness that it should carry with it.
Exactly. And the good thing about becoming available, and we can use it without the fear of being judged. I think one of the most important actually outcome of becoming available for everyday usage is somehow the label that once it attached to a traumatic event or my perception of a traumatic event around, in my lifetime, that label actually loses its sense. It doesn't stick so easily.
Exactly, yeah.
So people can easily talk about their bad experiences and the unknown effect of a bad event on their life, because it's an unknown effect. We are just, we are, the only thing that we experience in trauma, it's the hypervigilance, the outcome of stress. We can only describe that. When they are coming to therapy, you say, I am hypervigilant all the time. I am anxious all the time. There is no valid reasons. There is nothing outside that I know that there is nothing outside threatens me, but it's still I am hypervigilant and I'm worried all the time, constantly. So they only come to you and describe their symptoms without knowing how the impact is look like.
What's happening? They have no idea, and that's why it's confusing, because as we have discussed, that we are logical creatures. We are always looking for explanation, and so if I am this way, this is the reason, you know. So if this is happening, that's why. So we know that our emotions are kind of anxiety has a purpose, and when it's without any purpose, people feel confused. That where is it coming from? So that's natural, and trauma is an explanation. That can be added.
Our cat actually is meowing outside.
Wants to join this discussion.
Actually today we are going to engage with the concept of trauma from a very, very different point of view and from a very different perspective, an aspect that usually psychologists and psychiatrists actually engage with, which is neurobiology, neuroaffectivity. It's all about how brain is affected and impacted by a traumatic event. But we're gonna talk about trauma in a way that we somehow we can describe it as how it's lived. How you are living such traumatic event. How you are living the impact of an event. Because yes, events happen to us, impact us, but trauma is a kind of relationship that we have with that event, with that factual things that happened. A very different relationship that we have with the other normal facts around us. A kind of a relationship that impacts us, but we don't know how it impacts us. We know that we are touched, and it was a very hard touch. We are impacted. We feel the impact, but we don't know how we can find where is this point of impact. You know, the locality of the impact is unknown totally.
I think to just take it back to what we have discussed in our previous discussions about how we see counseling and how we work with our clients, and we talked about the whole idea of what we want people to become aware is the structure of their world. That's all phenomenology is about. That how it's not about this room being factually present for everyone the same way. We each structure it differently, and that's where trauma actually comes in, because the person who lives with a trauma, and we will come to the point that why they are living with a trauma is they live with it. It didn't happen. They live with it. Why are we saying that? How their world is structured so different. I was reading to someone, he said that I just feel that there's room full of people that I know, but we live on different planes. They're enjoying, and he was talking about his a trauma that he experienced, losing someone violently, and all of a sudden, and he said that now it's impossible for me to connect to the same people I used to connect so well in the past, because we are living in separate worlds now. And that's what is important to understand, how trauma kind of restructures your entire world and what it does to you. So it's not just a bad memory. We will come back to the idea that it's not the kind of memory we understand when we talk about that traumatic event. It goes way more deeper and is way more complex and deeply embedded than the way we understand memory.
Exactly. So today we are going to engage with the concept of trauma from a phenomenological point of view. And as we have actually engaged with the concept of phenomenology in our previous episodes, there are key elements when we are talking about phenomenologically analysis, analyzing something, or the phenomenological analysis. There are key points to that. One of these key points is about time and temporality.
Yes.
How we understand the time, the concept of time, because our experiences has a timely dimension to it.
Exactly. We are temporal creatures. We did talk a lot about it. That
we talked about temporality a lot.
Exactly. And we human beings are temporal. You can't imagine your life. It's the structure of your universe. It's part of Kant, who's not a phenomenologist, but a lot of phenomenologists kind of are inspired by him. He says that space and time are the goggles through which you look at the world.
Exactly.
So you can't look at the world and understand the world without the concept of space and time.
Exactly. And the reason for that is having a body. I mean, our body occupies the space and our body decays.
Exactly.
So actually the very hold that we have to this world is through our body, and our body occupies the space.
Yeah, that's
exactly.
We are being there. So spatiality is built within us, and so is temporality.
Exactly.
We are temporal beings, and it's impossible to even imagine our existence without
the concept of time and duration. The other concept is meaning making. You know, again, as design, as we talked about Heidegger, we talked about Husserl, Merleau-Ponty, Sartre. We talk about the meaning making. A human being is a meaning making machine.
Yeah.
Nothing has intrinsically given to us with a meaning.
Exactly.
Actually, things happen to us. It is us that we make meaning out of the things that affect us and impacts us.
Exactly.
And shapes our experiences. Exactly. Parts of that, this shaping of the experience, is the concept of meaning making.
Yeah.
The other thing is, whatever things in the world, whatever activity, whatever objects that we have in our world, we have an interest all the time. We approach things with a certain interest.
The whole idea of care from Heidegger.
Exactly. So we talked about we have an interest in engaging with everything. And that interest, it's not I'm not talking about the interest in a positive sense that we normally use. It doesn't have any positivity or negativity to it. It's a very neutral concept, and that means I approach something, I have an intentionality. This is a phenomenological concept that I wanted to introduce here, that there is an intentionality in everything that we do, in everything that we approach, in everything that we engage with. We engage with things because there is an intentionality. It's whatever we do, it's goal directed.
Goal oriented, directed towards that. And so it's not like bodily, in a way, bodily function. The way your heart is beating, it's not thinking about, oh, I need to keep this person alive, so that's why I have to beat. It's automatic. But all our actions, on higher or lower level, and like intentionality and level of awareness would differ, but we always engage with a purpose, with a directedness towards the world.
Exactly. And we are all the time impacted by the things that we are, engaging with. Yes, we have an intentional engagement with the things, but actually we are open to be affected by them as well. I go with a purpose toward anything, but actually I have an openness to be impacted by things. Otherwise, no experience actually happened here. No experience is built up here. So if we are taking these key elements about phenomenological analysis of an experience. Because these are the key elements of every experience. Okay, every human experience. Then we can try our best to understand trauma with the same, key elements and key terms that we have used. So let's talk about time first, because trauma.
I think we can give a ordinary example to show first that how all these elements would fit into that. So for example, just think about you entering this room and felt that the room is a bit warmer, and so what you decided was that I'm going to turn the aircon on. So there was this intentionality with which you moved towards that particular machine or switchboard in your house. And then after that, you once you turn it on, you and now you are back in the room, the temperature changes. So there's there's a temporality in the sense that, okay, it's warm now, we have to sit here, so in the future it will still keep warm. So you kind of, there's a temporality. Okay, I've turned it on now, in 5-10 minutes it will be cold.
You are expecting to be colder, so this expectation it's all about the concept of time.
Exactly. So I'm if it's not cool enough, you would say, I did turn it on, so you'll remember an event in the past. Why? So all the connection between these different events. But once you are here, again, you're impacted by the temperature now. Is it good? Is it bad? Do I need to adjust it? Do I need a jumper? So, it's just amazing. I'm happy to work in this temperature. So it's all impacting you. So you created with intentionality, you reached for that particular temperature, but at the same time, it is impacting you. And it's impacting you not in a way that the temperature is this or that degree. It's like cozy. That's meaning making. It's not about, even saying that the temperature is this or that is meaning making, because we say that by the point that it is here, it's this temperature, after this, it's that temperature. So we have attached those labels to temperature. Temperature is just temperature. It's just that is it. If you can describe it in terms of how atoms are moving and blah, blah, blah. But to be of a certain degree, that's what we have decided. But beyond that, more personalized way, it's all about, I'm feeling good, I'm feeling comfortable, I need a jumper. So all of that is meaning making.
Exactly.
So that's how normal.
This is exactly as you said. This is something happened around one certain experience that you described. So every experience can be approached with the same aspect and prospect. Actually, you're trying to see what are the elements of every experience, and this is how you can engage phenomenologically.
And we're not doing it consciously. This is who we are. And we are doing it all the time.
But when you phenomenologically approach it and access it, you try to dissect the experience according to the structure of the experience. These are the pillars of the experience that it really should, the material of the experience, that not the content, but the very structure, the framework that content go and sit in that and takes a shape. So these are the temporality, meaning making, intentionality, affect, and all these things that we describe here. So if we want to engage with the concept of trauma as a certain experience, trauma is an experience. It belongs to the world of experience. So one of the things that we can engage with, because we are talking about a past event, let's start with the idea of timing and temporality of such an experience.
Yes, definitely.
So we normally describe a traumatic event and an event that happens in the past. It doesn't matter how past, how long, and what is the distance between the time that it happened and the present time. It can happen 5 minutes ago, it can happen 10 years back, it can happen when I was a kid. So it really doesn't matter. It's something that belongs to the past. It's supposed to belong to the past.
And it could be one event or multiple events of the same nature or different natures. So we are not trying to classify anything particular here. for the sake of discussion, let's not discuss ongoing trauma. If someone is still in a traumatic kind of situation, let's keep that aside, because then it's a very, very different story.
Yeah, exactly.
So let's think about a trauma where the person is not anymore in that situation, is not probably living with people who have traumatized them, or at least if they are nearby, they are not causing any further trauma to them, intentionally or unintentionally, but like a proper way that you can say that they are causing or doing harm in any way. So let's say that they are out of the harm's way at the moment, and whatever has traumatized them, those events, one or multiple, have happened at some point in the past.
Yes, exactly.
So like for the sake of the argument, let's come to that.
Exactly. We just want to try to clarify the most basic nature of trauma.
Yeah.
So when we are talking about past, there are certain elements to that discussion, and one is I'm not living it now. I lived it.
Yes.
It happened to me. I am impacted by it. I am affected by it.
Yeah.
So when it's past, so it probably belongs to my memory.
Yeah.
So I remember it. When I can talk about my traumatic, the traumatic events that happened to me, I think that I'm just remembering things, and I'm telling you.
Yeah.
But I'm actually referring to a psychiatrist and a philosopher of the 20th century, the French philosopher Henri Bergson here.
Mm-hmm.
And Bergson actually has a very interesting concept of memory.
Mm-hmm.
He actually distinct between two types of memory, a pure memory and a habitual memory.
Mm-hmm.
Habitual memory is a memory that it is pro-reflective, it is habitual. I don't need to think about it, so it's doesn't need this conscious decision making of doing it. Somehow, we use a lot of this concept of muscle memory.
So bodily memory.
Exactly, bodily memory. This is something that I don't, decide that I want to stir the food on the stove, or I want to tie my shoes. I know how to do it. I know how to do it. It's again, I learned sometimes, but somehow I access it and it becomes part of me. It becomes part of the repetitive actions that I'm taking. So it's definitely repetitive. It doesn't need a conscious decision making, and it is pro-reflective. I don't think and I don't do an argument when I want to tie my shoes.
It's almost like you're on autopilot.
Exactly.
And it's just going.
Exactly.
And you're doing things like you can bring your attention to it, but you don't need to.
It's just like riding a bicycle, for example, or driving, or swimming. These are the things that, yes, I learned it and I'm using it, but what is this relationship of me practicing it and learning it, and then it becomes part of me, parts of my habitual life. So that is a habitual memory.
Yeah.
But what is pure memory? Pure memory is the things that happened in the past, or I did in the past, or I learned in the past, but there is a collection of these things that actually are concepts.
Yeah.
And I have a bank, exactly like a bank, that you have a bank of data.
Yeah.
And that is a pure memory. That pure memory is available all the time for you.
Yeah.
It's accessible.
Yeah.
But every time that you want to remember, for example, how many cups of rice I soaked, for example, I did it, but I didn't repeat it. So it doesn't turn into my habitual memory.
Like you can go to the example of cooking again. Like, when you're cooking something, you remember the recipe, but you need to, these many onions, you cut them, you do this. You said like stirring can be very, or like even chopping the onion can be a very, very habitual thing. But the recipe itself, looking at the how the food now looks. Do I need to add this or that? Do I need to adjust? So that's all part of your habitual memory.
The pure memory. Exactly.
It's still there.
Yeah.
It might be less available. You might need to check.
Yeah, exactly. Check the recipe again.
Or it might be something that is 100% in your brain, but you cannot do it on autopilot.
Exactly. You need certain kind of awareness.
And when we do it on autopilot, we are too tired.
Exactly.
Oh, I didn't do this.
Yeah, exactly.
Because, it required that level of attention. And most of the apps will be something in between. You have part of, habitual memory playing a role, part of pure memory, and most of the things that you do are a mix of both.
Exactly. Yeah. Exactly. So, so this pure memory is available for me. It's there. I stored it somewhere in the as a pure memory. Those are the concepts, but they need reflection. And whenever I want to use them, I reflect on them.
Yeah.
I configure it. I reconfigure it. I use it as pure elements to making something new.
What do you mean by configure and reconfigure?
So, for example, if I decide, just go back to the cooking example.
We are two busy mothers and wives.
The thing is, this is because this is something that we do all the time. But it is not habitual. So we need to think about it. So every time that I want to, for example, it was really interesting. Recently, I realized that if you chop onion like a cubic way and just do it as, juliet it's gonna have a different taste.
Yeah.
So I know that cutting cubic and juliet the onions gonna affect the taste of the food.
Yeah.
Okay. But in some food, I have other additives that definitely gonna affect the way, the onion gonna show itself. The taste of the onion gonna appear or disappear because I have other spices in it. In that sense, I decide not to do cubic. Just go for julietting. Why? Because I love the shape of it.
Okay, so
I know that it's happened, but I use it.
Okay.
Because of the shape of it, not because of the taste that it's gonna give me.
Okay, so the way I'm understanding it now is that you have configured that julienne onion have taste X, cubed onions have taste Y.
Exactly.
And this is the configuration. However, based on the new recipe, you could reconfigure that it doesn't matter whether I julienne or chop because the other spices. So you have reconfigured.
Exactly.
So meaning making is quite fluid here.
Exactly.
You are shifting. It doesn't mean you're discarding the old meanings, but you are able to kind of reintegrate a new meaning and bring the old ones with you. Sometimes you might discard old meanings. Sometimes you keep them.
That is actually the point of pure memory, that gives you the possibility of reconfiguration.
Yeah, it has all that creativity. Yeah,
exactly. It gives you the possibility of you touching them and just readjust them. You remake it in a different way. Imagine that you have some building blocks like the Lego blocks. Exactly. Imagine that you have Lego blocks, the basic ones, that you can use them all the time, but they give you the possibility of being built. You can build different things with the same material.
Yeah.
So that is the pure memory.
Yeah, so it has both the configuration and reconfiguration possibility.
Exactly.
Yeah, because it's part of your reflective awareness. You can play with it. You can build it because your brain knows. Brain is fully available to the brain, so the brain is able to turn it in this direction, that direction.
Yeah, exactly. Because the pure memory. I mean, why it is important. Sometimes I think, okay, why we're talking about memory. The most important, actually, reason for talking about memory is you cannot perceive anything without memory.
Exactly. We are our memories.
Actually, whatever we are doing now at the moment, and I'm perceiving and I'm seeing this computer, this light, and this greenery is here. I see you. I'm feeling the temperature on my skin. I see the glow of this candle. So whatever I'm doing, these are perceptions. I cannot make sense any of that unless I have a building blocks of that.
Yes.
And that pre-building blocks of that, it belongs to my pure memory.
Yes, exactly.
So without a memory, perception it's impossible.
Yeah.
That's why it is important talking about memory. And so we see that whatever we do in terms of our upcoming, our future perceptions and experiences, actually we're building on a past.
Yeah,
and that is our pure memory.
And both pure and the habitual memory as well, because I was talking to a friend recently, and his dad has dementia and very advanced. So he was telling us that he has good or bad days, and so he said that there are days that he couldn't walk, in the sense that he doesn't remember how to lift his leg to move. So that's bodily memory.
Yes.
As a child, you learned, and how exciting it was when we are moms. So we remember when our kids learned how their legs move, what are the purpose of this muscle, and that's pure bodily memory. It's something we learned. We will not tell our ages, but those many years ago, as young toddlers. And that's still pushing us. But if you run, when you lose that memory, you have no way of even moving a single step in this world.
It's unbelievable.
Memory is everything. Exactly. Whether it's pure memory, kind of makes us human.
Yes.
Bodily memory makes us functional androids in a way.
Exactly.
And pure memory kind of makes all our relationships, all our connections, all interest, joy, sorrow, pain, it's all pure memory.
All of the experiences that we have, all of the perceptions that we make in every moment of our life really relies on the pure memory.
Exactly.
So we need those building blocks.
Exactly. We are nothing without that.
Exactly. So imagine that pure memory as building blocks. What happens in trauma? In trauma, you don't make of a past event, you cannot make the elements of the past event, collect it and restore it and actually put it in the bank of data. You perceive it as something that happens at the moment. And somehow, because it is all the time present for you. It's all the time, Van der Kolk calls it eternal present. Because a traumatic event, that fact, is all the time present, penetrates from the past into the present. It oozes out all the time from the past into the present without me wanting it. I don't want it. But somehow, because it is repeated and I couldn't reflect on it, it can become my habitual memory. It becomes my habitual memory. It is stored in my everyday existence of a movement of my body, the figure of my body, the shape of my body. Every body movement actually is affected by that. Actually, that memory shaped the way that I live in this world with my body. So it stays, because it's a constant present thing, it is repeated, it becomes a habitual memory. It never stopped, ceased existence, so I can store it into the pure memory. So it can never be a building block. It doesn't turn into a basic building block, so I can restore it and recollect it anytime that I need it.
Yeah, I mean, I'm getting where you're going with it. It's like first of all, the thing is that trauma is not a pure memory, and I'll come back to that idea. And the reason for that is that we never see it in the past.
Exactly.
The trauma is not in the past. Memory by default is past.
It belongs to the past.
Yeah. So like what we said 5 seconds ago is past now, and I can reflect on it.
Exactly.
But what I'm just saying right now is not a memory.
No.
It's actual event happening right now. And with trauma, because so the thing is that trauma is first of all never in the past, and that's a huge point that we have to come back to.
The event hasn't finished yet. It seems that
so it's an ongoing,
as if exactly this is this concept that psychologists use it as if it happens constantly, repeatedly. It never finished and turn into a virtual existence that has an existence in the past. So that's the first thing. The way it becomes your habitual memory, like the hypervigilance, whatever it is through its repetition.
Because whatever is habitual memory, it is not because it happened to me once. Like reflexes are like that. If I'm burnt by fire, that's reflex. That's not habitual memory. Habitual memory is more about repeated experience. You do it so many times that you learn that if you do this, like, kids, they drop a thing like a million times. Cats, they keep dropping. Has it gone down? So like, so they learn through experimenting. So reflexes are much more necessary for our existence. So you learn in one experience that it's bad for you. But habitual memory is more about repetition. So because trauma is being repeated all the time, and we're not talking about trauma caused by multiple repetitive events. It could be one event. What we mean is that the event never stops happening, which would bring me to the point that a lot of people would be thinking that, for example, if someone had a bad experience, for example, they experienced sexual assault once as a child, horrific experience, but it happened only once. And they can remember. I mean, they can remember what happened. Like maybe in the beginning, people block a lot of memories, but later on, they do remember what happened. They can tell the story if they have that capacity to revisit that event. They can tell the perpetrator who he or she was, what happened. So all those events are there. So why are we not calling it a pure memory?
Because the whole idea is the moment that they are talking about, instead of talking about as a virtual existence, they perceive it again, they live it in their body. Because they have never stored it as a component that can be meaningful. They couldn't restore it as a meaningful event. They stored it as something that they are living it at the moment without the possibility of reflecting on that. They've never reached to the level that the cognitive or even intellectual relationship can happen with that event. And it's the whole idea of why is there are so many reasons behind that. It can be various reasons that why one event. We can have couple of you can have certain amount of people with the insult, with the sexual insult experience almost in the same age or time, but not all of them are traumatized by it. Some of them are traumatized by it. Yes, it was a very bad experience for them. They don't like to engage with it, but they are not traumatized by it. The reasons is not about why some people can be traumatized by certain events and why some people can just survive it. They can just move through that habitual experiencing it every time that they're talking about it, and just save it and preserve it in the as building blocks for next experiences. So why is not about we don't discuss why here.
Why in the sense of like what's happening with their brain or this or that. That's not our area.
No,
we are trying to analyze.
Not focusing on that.
We are interested in what
exactly
what is happening. And so that's I was also thinking about, like, when we were discussing that why, and again, this is not a why of that question, but how come that experience is not in the past when that person can narrate it. We can also think about that trauma is actually not the event.
Yeah.
That's really important to remember. They can remember the event. Of course, that event traumatized them.
Yes.
But the trauma itself is within the body, and it's not actually part of the accessible memory.
Exactly.
In that way.
Saima, actually, you made a very, very good point. When we're talking about the event and the trauma effect of the event, or the accident, whatever, the accident or the event happened in the past as a fact, something that happened. Everyone can talk about that. Every newspaper can write about it. But the relationship that I have and I made and I actually established with the things that happened to me, things that happen to us, the first things that happen to us is by affect. We talked about it, Spinoza.
Yeah, with Spinoza.
The world affects us on an emotional level.
Exactly.
We are impacted by the world first and foremost on the level of affect.
Yeah.
So our bodily engagement with the event is the first thing that can be, our body is the first thing that can be affected by the event.
Exactly.
So normally, the moment that we are affected by the event, we are impacted emotionally.
Yeah.
So something happened to us on a level of emotion. We are surprised by that. We are shocked by that. We are, injured in that incident. It was it was our body. So the body is the first level of penetration by the effect, by the fact or by the event. But the thing is, yes, everything happens to us through our body, our experiences, but we can reflect on our experience, the things that happen to us, and we can analyze it. We can find the elements of that experience and restore it in the places that it belongs.
Yeah.
The past experience belongs to the past.
Yeah.
We need to make a relation to it. Say, this sharp knife cut my finger, cut my hand. So, but it was in the past.
Yeah.
I now band-aid it, but it belongs to the past. I put it, I restore it. Yes, it has the bodily effect of cutting my hand now, but I don't repeatedly feel the cutting in my hand. I restore it in the past, in my memory. Every time that I'm looking at it, for some time, I say, oh my God, you cut my hand. But it's not that in every interaction with the knife, I feel the cutting in my body.
I think I was thinking of an example here, especially about the whole idea of experiencing something and then making part of your memory. And I remember I was in year 11 or 12 or something like that. And there are a couple of things that are part of that experience, but it was in my school and we had this kind of like ground, with soil, which was, and it was after a rain, so it was a bit wet. And I was walking, and my sister and some of her friends and some of my friends it was a big ground, and they were standing on different areas. And I was just walking across the field, and my foot slipped. And now when I think about it, I see myself in the middle of the ground, like I'm standing on the side. I see myself slipping and falling. But when I think of that experience, all I remember was a weird kind of gravitational pull, the sky, the sounds, and then being on the ground. So, it takes me a while to go back to that experience, and then my sister laughing, which was like embarrassing, and at the same time being heard in the back. Like, luckily I was really young, 13, 14, so we survived that fall. Now I don't know what would happen to my back, but anyway. So in that moment, the event didn't happen in the order. It was just a very bodily experience of a lots of different kind of push and pulls. Balance was weird, But now when I think of it, I just look at it as a spectator.
Yes.
I remember, and I can even see I didn't remember seeing my sister and everyone in that moment, but now I can add all of that.
Elements to it.
Elements to the story. I picture the whole thing. I can imagine the other grounds which were not visible in that moment. So the actual experience was something very bodily, very experiential. I can try to, even this talking about the gravitational pull and push was all about trying to be reflective about it. I cannot put into words what I was feeling. I can still visit that feeling because it was very, it's still like a very weird experience of losing your ground and being just in the air or something like that. But the all the details and all the storytelling was added much more later.
Exactly.
And when we are talking about trauma, the events are there, but what you actually experience, the affects, we learn to put words to that later on. But with trauma, we are not able to.
We never reach to the point that you can put names on the things that happen to you.
It's the events that you could name, the people you could name, the sequence of.
But how you lived it, you cannot.
And because you're still living it.
Exactly.
You're still in the moment of falling.
Exactly.
You're not yet on the ground and your brain hasn't prepared, your memory hasn't come back, your functions hasn't. You're constantly in that free fall all the time. And that's why there's no room to process it.
Exactly.
Processing needs a distance.
Exactly. It needs a distance. It needs to become a virtual. It needs to. The existence of the event should turn into a virtual existence rather than a real existence.
Exactly.
So I can reflect on it.
It shouldn't be in the present. Just that coming back to that point that it's shouldn't be penetrating my present.
Exactly.
I cannot process things that are happening in the present.
Yeah.
Once I'm past that moment, sometimes you feel like, you're realizing, sometimes you're saying really stupid things, and while you're saying you realize it to some extent, but you still again, past and present are again very, very at what point, millisecond, second. So again, but in the exact moment of doing it, you are not able to process.
No.
You need even a millisecond's distance from it to feel like very stupid words are coming out of my mouth.
Yes.
So you need that distance of the previous word and the things it's building is really stupid.
Yeah.
I should probably turn it around.
Yeah.
So you need that distance, and with trauma, it's impossible because not the event is not happening again, but the impact, the affect, that is getting repeated, and there's no possibility of ever. And we are not saying that the person is repeating it, the event is getting repeated.
It's lived like that.
Yeah,
you know, as if the event hasn't been finished.
Exactly.
It's not ever concluded. It's not terminated.
Exactly.
So when we were talking about that, I thought we can actually come to this idea of this disjunction of duration. This is what Bergson calls to trauma. It disrupts the flow of time. Look, it's something that happened when you were 13, 14. So it belongs to the past. But imagine that you were traumatized by that incident, the feeling of embarrassment, because the feeling of embarrassment might stay. I remember that it was a winter morning, and it was the first semester of university, and I wore a lot of clothes, and I was going to uni for the first exam of the first semester. And it was in the middle of the street. The snow was on the ground, and I fell. Actually, it's impossible for me that I walk when it's wet, and I don't remember that feeling.
Wow.
I just feel the embarrassment and the pain, and and I needed to just reach the uni because it was the first exam of the first semester. I was rushing, and I needed a peaceful time for myself. And I was in the middle of, all the people were there. It was a busy morning, and I felt so every time I just pass the street, and especially on this passing lines that you just cross the road, the white ones are really slippery. It's impossible that I walk and I don't feel the weird feeling of slipping on it. So it stayed with me. That little thing, it traumatized me, really.
Yeah, in Alaska, I remember when we lived in Alaska, whatever be the reason, there was a lot of static discharge. Like if you touch cans in supermarket, you would get a sort of a shock trolley. So I can't touch it. I would just touch it first. Even now in a supermarket, I would first touch it like that. And then I can't grab a can. Even now, it's like how many years ago? 13 years ago, I used to live in Alaska.
So it's really interesting things that happen to us. So it belongs to the past. 25 years ago, more than 27 years ago, this thing happened to me. But still, every time I'm passing the street, I'm just very, very careful about that. Because I can still feel the feeling in my body.
The past creeps into the present.
Exactly. Yeah. Actually, it's really oozing out to my present action that should be easily habitual. I need to habitually just pass the street. But I reflect on every walk every time that I just walk on that
because
street.
It's not the event, it's the experience that is still there.
Exactly.
It hasn't left you. You're still stuck.
So I need to say, okay, this belongs to the past. Now I am in the present, and the present gonna melt into a future.
Mm-hmm.
So what happens in trauma, because this event never melts into a past, disappears to the past.
Unending,
It's an unending or eternal present.
Ongoing.
Exactly. It disrupts the flow of time.
Yeah.
You cannot understand the things that are around you because you're stuck on a certain event. You don't have a certain proper relationship with the time, with the world. World has a time.
Exactly, yeah.
If I lose the grasp of time, in my experience, actually, immediately I'm going to lose the grasp of the time and duration of the world.
Exactly.
The people around me. I feel all the time confused about the things that are happening. I don't understand when this happened. I don't understand what will happen.
Yeah.
And when you don't have that present that melts into a past, and you're constantly living a certain present, you'll never reach a future.
Yeah.
Present should turn into a past and a present.
Yeah.
Present is nothing other than this joint of, the moment that past comes and joins the future.
Exactly.
That moment of...
Because both past and present and future are like kind of in a way limitless.
Yes.
It's like, your past is not just your past. Everything that happened in the world before you as well
it belongs
is also
to the past.
It's part of your past too. Like, 6 billion years ago when Big Bang happened.
Yes.
That's my past.
Yes.
That's my past. I cannot deny that.
Yeah.
So past has an unending reservoir of events, memories, things like that. Future is also
future of the world,
everything.
It's not only my future. I belong to the world, so it's going to be the future of the world.
Exactly. I imagine the world without me.
Exactly.
So that's also my future. So these are eternal, unending in a way.
Yes.
Present is very short-lived.
Exactly. And it is this moment of these things come together and change. I think it's just a bridge. Present is a bridge.
Exactly. It's nanoseconds.
Exactly.
You're just living in those seconds and moving past.
It's that experience of I finish this sentence and you are expecting me to continue that sentence.
Exactly.
So the expectation of the future is there. But imagine that you are living in a certain present forever and ever.
Yeah.
So not only you don't have that past, the connection to the past is gone. The connection to the future almost has gone.
Yeah.
The possibilities that a non-traumatized person can see as these are the open horizon and my experiences. You know, that open horizon of the experiences are not open to this person. Because this only opens up when I live a present in an expectation of moving away from the present to the future.
Yeah.
I left the past to the past and I'm moving toward a direction toward a future.
Yeah.
But I'm living constantly certain event repeatedly. It's impossible. I don't have any future.
Yeah.
Not only I lose the grasp of my future, I lose the whole world's future.
Yeah. I remember there's this series on Netflix called Russian Doll.
Yeah.
It's all about, you know, this experience, and it has a lot to do with addiction and how addiction works. But the whole thing is that, you know, the person dies and then she wakes up on the same day again, and she keeps on dying.
Yeah.
No matter what she does.
Exactly.
And so the whole issue was that, you know, we would all die one day. So that's there. But this same event being repeated and she's not able to break the cycle just kills the future.
Yeah.
And kills the present. Yeah. Because present has no meaning unless you can have an open future.
Yeah, exactly.
If you're living the past.
Exactly. If you don't see present as something, but as in meeting position. Imagine that's a meeting point.
Exactly.
The point that past meet the future.
Exactly.
If you understand present as this, then you think about if a past becomes a constant present, there is no meeting point.
No. You lose.
There's
no
totally
present.
Disrupted.
There's no present, and by default, there's no future.
Exactly.
Because, you know, the past, your present is built on the past. You know, we are speaking here because the memories, the habitual, the pure memory, all of those things are building my present and my future. That is there. So we need the past, but the past is in the past.
Yeah.
I'm accessing it. I am bringing it through my body here, but you know, these movements, like I'm used to making hand gestures because I have done them repeatedly, but this is a new hand gesture.
Yeah.
This is happening in the present. It's not something that is happening in autopilot mode from the past. So, you know, that's where, you know, my life has a proper relationship with temporality when the past stays in the past. Helps me build my present, but the present is leading towards the future, which is open, which is not yet fixed, which is something I'm trying to create, generate, but I don't know what it's going to be. But the moment I lose the present and future, you know, my life kind of loses its relationship with temporality.
It's a loss of a relationship with temporality. Yeah. Not only disrupts your time consciousness, this is a phenomenological word, this not only you lose this sense of time constitution, inner time constitution, somehow you are losing the concept of the world time constitution because you belong to the world.
Yeah.
Things happen around you without you noticing them. You're constantly stuck in a situation or are impacted. It's like it's a moment of impact all the time. That moment hasn't been finished.
Yeah, and sometimes you see people like really mature 70, 80-year-olds, and the way they are talking, not in the sense that the voice or something, but the immaturities that of a 10-year-old, 5-year-old.
About an event,
irrationality of their whole behavior, and that's where you realize that they are stuck. They are still that 5-year-old, although they look like, and they are professional, they are educated. When they are able to function, just bracketing or just kind of like somehow put that trauma into a box and just throw themselves into their work, they're fine. They're doing fine in whatever capacity we can define fine. But these same rational, logical, intelligent people, when somehow the trauma is triggered, they act at the same stage where they're stuck.
Yes.
They are a 5-year-old, 10-year-old, 13-year-old girl or boy.
Yeah.
Not that mature adult anymore.
Yeah.
Because you lose time.
Yes.
All that time that has elapsed since that event is totally gone. You are gone back to that stage of being just 13 again.
It's really interesting because sometimes how come that time has gone? I'm aging. It's not about the time has gone and you lost the hold of time. It's not that your body is fixated on a certain point of time and location. Your relation to the thing has changed. The relationship, the moment of making relationship to that event is fixated. And when you're talking about this an aged person, then when they talk about a certain trauma or a certain event, it feels like they're acting as a 10-year-old boy. Why a 10-year-old boy? Because that 10-year-old boy has never the opportunity to grow.
Yeah, exactly.
What happened then? Who is this boy? This is the boy that cut off that point of time and that event
and they're living
the past related to that event, cut it off from their identity, put it somewhere, not collected as a pure memory, somewhere scattered. It's imagine that it's an endless space that you scatter stuff. So you see that
deeply buried
or buried, or just left or buried somewhere. But at least it doesn't belong to the pure memory either. So they cannot use them as a building block of a future, or they cannot reconfigure it. What they do is they cut off that parts of themselves. This is how IFS talks about parts.
Exactly.
So they cut off certain relationship that person had with that event or that fact, and they never talk about it. They never reflect on it because it never reached a level of reflection.
They call them exiles.
Exactly.
They have
exiled it. Exactly. In the IFS you called it exiled it, that you cannot reach it. You don't revisit it, and you move on. But it's like one of these pages. Imagine that this is your identity. You made a hole on it.
It's there.
It's there, but it's a hole. After some time, after 90 years old living in this world, probably if you had a very traumatized life, all this page is full of these holes. You cannot call this is a whole page. This identity, it's full of holes. You cannot see anything that is written on this paper. You lost the narrative of the life of this person. Everything that is written on this, it's not accessible because it's full of holes. No connections. The connections between the words are lost.
Exactly.
Because it's a hole. It's a hole. It's a hole. So this is exactly like something that happens to a traumatized person. I talked about this page and the narration that is, or the story that is written on this page. This is something that Paul Ricoeur talks about. It. Trauma disrupts the narrative identity. That hole that happens in your formation of who you are. So you're losing part of the narration by exile that part of yourself, or that person who experienced, that 10-year-old that experienced the traumatic event, buried it somewhere, exiled it somewhere, and you made a hole in this narration that you were writing. So not only you cannot properly talk about it as a past event, when you arrive, imagine that you're reading the story and there is a big hole here. You don't know what the connection between the past and the next sentence is lost because the meaning, the word that was connecting these two is gone.
It hasn't been processed,
So imagine that you have these different holes all around this page. How many disjoint, not meaningful things happen when you are reading the story of that person?
Yeah.
It's totally meaningless.
Yeah.
That person cannot connect the things that happens to them. When we are talking about you need to own your trauma and your experience of the event or the bad event, it's like that you need to say, okay, I know that there is, maybe you can just mark it with a red, but put the word here, put it as a red thing, that it's different. It is important in my lifetime. When I'm writing my narrative, there are certain words that I just redlined underneath them, but I don't punch them out. I wrote them in red. It was meaningful. These are the turning point of my life. They are affected. The words that I'm gonna put after that red word, it has a very different nature because that was a turning point, but I don't punch it out.
I think I want to bring a bit of Spinoza here, because we can come back to the same thing again, that people, like some people who have been deeply traumatized, they don't have event memory either. They kind of wipe that whole event. So that's one category. But a lot of other people, they can tell you the stories of how they were abused, how they were harmed, however they still carry the trauma within them. And that's where we can bring back Spinoza, because remember that in order for any affect to become active affect, it has to be part of your intentionality, part of your knowledge. So they can remember the event, they can tell the story, but as if it belongs to someone else.
Exactly.
As I was able to tell the story of me falling, because as if I was watching myself fall, as if I was among the spectators.
That is exactly, that was the way that you were telling us.
Exactly.
I'm actually reflecting as an spectator.
Exactly, but that's not how you experience it. And for it to become, part of your narrative, it has to become a part of your, it still will be an affect, but it needs to be processed in a way that it's also pure memory, not just the event.
Exactly.
The experience itself. And then you kind of become its author. You kind of become its, not, I don't want to say owner, but somehow it's owned by you now. It's your experience.
It is your experience. Actually, you decide what kind of terminology you're going to use it after that word.
And that's where the whole idea of configuration and reconfiguration comes in. So the narrative that we say here, so one sense of narrative is telling a story. However, the narrative identity that we tell of ourselves is
who I am. What am I doing? What is my purpose? What have I done? Where am I gonna end up?
Exactly. So it has this the tripartite nature of past, present, and future. But with trauma, even the past is not fully owned in a way. You're telling the stories as if, like for example, victimhood. If you're living into the victimhood, and again, we are not saying it to blame the traumatized, but rather how victimhood actually is not a narrative identity.
No.
You are not owning, it's too difficult to own those experiences, so you just stay behind the facade of the events as if it happened to someone else.
As if you're just looking at it from the window, at the back of the window.
Yeah, exactly.
Through a glass.
So totally distancing yourself from all the difficult traumatic experiences because they are ongoing. They haven't left you yet. So you're not able to actually even look at them. You're just looking at the events, and there's no possibility of building a narrative identity because you have no future, no present. It's just that trauma ongoing all the time. You pretend you're telling it, but it's not actually, what we call it in some normal sense a narrative identity. It's kind of lost in that situation.
And when you cannot, exactly as this page, when you cannot read whatever happened or retell what is happening, and there are lots of holes that the whole, whatever it's appearing on this page, lost its meaning. So the narration is meaningful. When something doesn't have when it's meaningful, meaningless, and when something it doesn't convey any meaning, the possibility of reconfiguration actually is lost.
Exactly.
So when I cannot narrate my story, I cannot go back and reinterpret it.
Exactly.
Because there's no interpretation happened in the first
Yeah, we haven't interpreted it yet.
We haven't interpreted it.
We are living it.
So there is no possibility of reinterpretation.
Exactly. Yeah. So, and this is where healing lies.
Exactly.
Because healing needs reinterpretation. First interpretation,
exactly.
and then reinterpretation. Yeah. And that's a whole new podcast.
Exactly. Yeah. So because I think whatever we've done in that in this episode was trying to actually analyze the building block of the traumatic experience. Exactly. We talked about the phenomenological structure of the experience, and then we tried to understand what are the structure of a traumatic experience.
Yeah.
When we know the structure of the traumatic experience, we can revisit it, and then we try to adjust it. If you don't know what is the structure of any experience, you cannot correct it.
You haven't given it meaning yet. You haven't processed it yet. It's unprocessed, ongoing, and that's why it lacks. I mean, it, like every experience is first unprocessed, and that's the normal process of phenomenological experience. That first it comes unprocessed, goes to the past, you're able to process it, you move to the next one. But with trauma, this has been happening for so long without being processed that it disrupts everything. It disrupts meaning making, it disrupts your own identity making, the narrative identity making. It disrupts your relationship with the world because your temporality is sort of disjointed, sort of broken, so you are not able to have the kind of care, not care in the sense of care that we use normally, but
the
Heideggerian care. So you just lose that connection with the people around you, the mid-sign, your own. We haven't discussed spatiality yet, and I think we haven't reflected on spatiality and trauma yet. We might be able to. But here the focus is on the temporal relation and how, because of the broken temporal relation, it just breaks all the other phenomenological structure. And that's why trauma is such a disrupting experience. Not the event, the trauma itself.
The relationship that I have
with that experience. And that's where, we need to meet the client first. Where they are at, in terms of being stuck in the moment. So first we need to identify. Not the event, but the experience itself. And that's the first step. First configuring it. Towards any other future possibility.
Exactly. Seima, thank you so much. You made a great, actually, conclusion and summary of what we've been discussed in the past an hour. And thank you everyone for listening to us and listening to this episode about trauma and phenomenological analysis of trauma. We're going to talk about how to approach trauma and another concepts that it can be named as intergenerational trauma. And how we can deal with the idea of intergenerational trauma, how it can be observable, how it can be, how the symptoms are, they reveal itself. So if it doesn't belong to me, if it belongs to a generation past, then how it can even be accessible. And then we're talking about because it has symptoms. Think about the habitual memory, because there are stuff in our habitual interaction with the world that can trace back to a trauma that didn't happen to me, but to a past generation.
And so the past, as we said, it's from everything is my past. So that's why it's important to remember that trauma can also be inherited.
Thank you so much, and looking forward to see you again and hear from you in our next episode.
Thank you.
Bye.
Bye-bye.